Night rain crawls down the fog glass, cold hands wrapped tight round this cup. Quiet rooms live inside my chest. Your chair waits, but you do not. I count the times I almost spoke, each unreturned call rings in my bones. I loved you with open arms. You held your heart like a fortress. Fading light fell between our words. Trembling breath broke on your silence. I loved you with open arms. City once burned bright with our names. Now streets feel like empty doorways. Photographs shaking in my tired hands. Your half smile never reached your eyes. I moved closer, you stepped off the edge. I waited there. You didn't come back. I loved you with open arms. You held your heart like a fortress. Too late to mend the torn ground. My fault, I mistook fear for doubt. I loved you with open arms. The night we broke, the rain stopped. Your silence roared louder than goodbye. You stared past me down that old street. Pale love is a war no one wins. If I had spoken, would you stay or just flinch from the light of me? Now truth sits low in my throat. Wanting you was never enough. Your fears built walls I could not cross. I walk home alone through our ghosts. I loved you with open arms. You held your heart like a fortress. Between hope and defense we both shattered. I would have held you longer, you hid deeper. Two hearts on pages that never met. I loved you with open arms. I'll keep your shadow softly and let you go. Rain slides slow down the cafe glass. Fading light on your empty chair. Cold hands wrapped round an empty cup. I breathe your name into the steam. If I had spoken when you turned away, would your walls have slipped for one breath? We were islands in the same storm. I waited, you didn't come back. Photographs shaking in my tired mind. Night rain blurs the life we planned. We were islands in the same storm. First time I saw the god rise, your eyes flinched and turned to stone. My hope bloomed where your fear grew, each soft word lost in the gap. If I had spoken before you froze, would your cold hands have reached mine? We were islands in the same storm. I waited, you didn't come back. Quiet rooms echo with what we hear. My fault hangs in the fading light. We were islands in the same storm. Your silence said more than any plea. I loved you with open hands, but you closed the door, left slow. Empty doorways hold your trembling breath. Too late to mend what we broke. Our soft failings drift through night rain. Now I sit where our days began. Unreturned calls haunt my dim screen. I would have held you longer, love, if I had known there was goodbye. We were islands in the same storm. I waited, you didn't come back. My fault sits quiet beneath each word. Fading light crowns our beautiful failure. I whisper thanks for the hurt we shared. We were islands in the same storm. In this quiet room, I finally let you go.
Night rain slides down the coffee glass. Dim room hums with soft blood talk. Your first glance lives in that haze, cold hands. My heart still reached, you spoke in half smiles. Long soft pause, I filled the gaps. You slipped away. I loved you enough to stay, but your silence kept locking the door. My trembling breath hung in the air, photographs shaking in my tired mind. I loved you enough to stay. Hid your fear in quiet jokes. Your eyes turned off when mine opened. Unreturned calls piled like night snow. I waited. You didn't come back. You spoke in half-truths. Long soft shadows, I filled the dark. hands in each night. My trembling breath met your fading light. Empty doorways grew between each word. I loved you enough to stay. If I had spoken less, just stay. Maybe your cold hands might have warmed. Love can be refuge or slow trap. I held hope like glass it cut. You thought closeness meant losing yourself. I thought leaving meant losing you. Now I sit where your laughter floated. Quiet rooms echo what we never said. My fault lives in each missed question. Your fear grows in what I pressed. I loved you enough to stay, but you needed me to finally lie. Trembling breath turns into thin ghosts. Too late to hold you any longer. Night rain erases our small, unsure footprints. I loved you enough to stay. In the fading light, I let you go quietly. Fading light on rain-marked glass. Cold hands on this warm cup. Your old seat waits by the door. Quiet room, my name unsaid. I taste the words I never spoke, shaking. If I tried once more, would you stay? I would have held you longer. Night rain drew maps on your face. Silence between us cut so deep. You turned away, I stayed there. I would have held you longer. Early days were soft and hope. Your shy smile, a guarded flame. Every touch felt like borrowed time. My trembling breath feared the end. I traced the lines of what we missed, shaking. If I had begged that night, would you stay? I would have held you longer. Empty doorways, unreturned calls, cold nights. Your shadow slipped back into the dark. promise sank with the city glow. Love dies in the words we swallow. I loved you outside your lock walls. You never opened the door. Now hope feels thin as winter air. Photographs shaking in my tired hands. Your eyes once held a brief warm flicker, then chose the dark, not my arms. I would have held you longer. Fading light leaves dust on your chair. Quiet rooms echo all I never said. I waited, you didn't come back. My fault lingers like slow night rain. I would have held you longer. I'll leave your ghost here and walk out alone.
Night rain sleeps, small glass pane. Cold hands curl around this chipped cup. Fading light hums across quiet walls. Your name hangs where my breath stops. I waited through each pause in your voice, hoping one soft word might let me in. I would have held you long if you had turned and stayed. Photographs shaking in my tired hands. My fault lives in each unspoken word. I would have held you longer. Stood there, eyes like locked doors. Empty doorways grew between each touch. Unreturned calls stacked like gray skies. Your silence whispered slow goodbyes. I waited through each storm in your gaze, praying one small crack might let me in. I would have held you longer if your walls had let me breathe. Night rain washed our names from glass. Too late to learn what love could be. I would have held you longer. Ooh. I traced the air where you once stood. Quiet rooms keep all the words buried. I loved you fully, my chest remembers. But you loved only the space without me. Your shadow stays, the body has gone. I talk to the dark, it answers nothing. Now I see the truth you carry. You fear the fall more than the void. I'm broke on the edge of your fortress. Love bled out in that last still stare. I would have held you longer, even as my trembling breath failed. If I had spoken before the fracture, maybe your cold hands would have warmed. But you chose distance, I chose release.
fading light. I finally let you go.
Night rain blurs the skyline below me. Cold hands trace this cracked gray edge. Quiet place where we once hid. Your shadow sits where you once did. I waited here till the fading light broke. Whispered your name, but the wind took it. I loved you in the empty space, where your fear built its high walls. Every step close, you slip further back. My trembling breath lost in quiet rooms. I loved you in the empty space. Eyes were miles just past mine. You spoke in halves, then silence grew. Unreturned calls rang through my chest. Hope shook like photographs in night rain. I waited there while the street lights flickered. Called your name softly, dark answer. I loved you in the empty space. Under street lamps your tears hit true. Your hands pushed mine like a thin shield. Too late to ask why you stayed distant. I loved you in the empty space. Your lonely heart wore armor made of ghosts. You said nothing, but your shaking showed everything. If I had spoken, would you stay? My love can't heal what won't be touched. I stepped back, felt our distance turn solid. You walked off, my promise turned to mist. Now this rooftop holds what we were. Quiet echoes of words I say. My fault maybe for loving your wall. I would have held you longer, you know. I loved you in the empty space. Between your cold hands and my reach, I see now you chose your silence. I lost you where you hid from yourself. Still I stand here, heart open to rain. I loved you in the empty space. One day I'll leave this rooftop, not you.
Fog wraps the pier in fading light. Your shadow sits where you would stand. Cold hands deep in my coat. Night rain waits just past the bay. I spoke your name so soft it broke. The sound sank fast through quiet rooms inside. I loved you quietly enough to let go. Photographs shaking in my tired hands. Your half-truths float in the gray air. My trembling breath counts each unreturned call. I loved you quietly enough to let go. You watched the waves, I watched your eyes. You pulled from touch like it burned. Each small step close made you fade. Our words turned thin like misted glass. I begged the dark to give you back, but the dark just held your guarded silence. I loved you quietly enough to let go. Fading light bruised the skyline above us. Your walls rose high from old night rain. I waited there, you didn't come back. I loved you quietly enough to let go. If I had spoken, would you stay or break into beneath that truth? Some hearts wear armor made of memory. We were two ghosts pressed hand to hand, one longing heart, one always shielding, both trapped in steps we could not stop. Storm clouds gathered over the black pier. You pulled away faster than the thunder. Hope slipped down through my shaking fingers. I saw our end in that small flinch. I loved you quietly enough to let go. My fault hangs low in the gray sky. I would have held you longer through fear, but love can't live where doors stay closed. Your silence echoes through each quiet room. I loved you quietly enough to let go. So I walk home alone, carrying your unspoken goodbye. Night rain blurs the glass and street. Cold hands trace this cracked white cup. Your chair stays an empty shadow. Fading light leans soft across mine. If I had spoken when you trembled, would your fear have learned my name? I would have held you longer while your quiet room shook with ghosts. Every unreturned call still rings inside my photograph shaking in the dark. I would have held you longer. You said closeness felt like slow drowning. Some sad poem. So I loved you with open hands. You love distance more than my touch. If I had listened past your silence, would your fear have learned my name? I would have held you longer on that sidewalk under hollow lamps. Your eyes were night rain almost falling. You stepped back from my reaching hand. I would have held you longer. Our love was a door safe to leave, too cut to stay. I waited, you didn't come back. My eye broke where you could not see. My trembling breath fogs the window. Now I see your walls were wounds. You were not a storm, just scared. I was heat against your locked glass. My fault was burning where you froze. I would have held you longer, even as your eyes begged for distance. I mistook your chasm for a promise. Hope was the knife in my chest. You feared drowning, I sank alone. I would have held you longer. In this quiet room, I finally let you go. Gray light spills on your empty chair. First time I saw you, glass and shadows, cold hands wrapped round a chip white cup. You looked away, I looked too long. Every word from you felt half away, half gone. I waited in that quiet hum, afraid to move. I loved you softer than your walls. Night rain pressed against a cafe glass. Your trembling breath hid in your small laugh. The If I had spoken, would you have stayed? I love you softer than your walls. Each talk a step, then a retreat. Your silence rose like a locked gate. Photographs shaking in my tired mind. I hope you love me deep but quiet. Your distance grew like rose in fading light. I waited through unreturned calls, still afraid to move. I loved you softer than your walls. On that bridge, the city lights broke. You said being seen would only cut deeper. My hope became the weight you feared. I loved you softer than your walls. You were a tide pulled back from shore. I held out hands you would not trust. Some hearts stay safe by staying alone. Your eyes said go, your voice said stay. My fault was loving more than you could. I would have held you longer, you ran. Now quiet rooms echo with what I missed. Too late to mend those unseen cracks. I see where hope turned into hollow, where love became the shield you lifted. I loved you softer than your walls. Back at that window, gray light sinking. I speak to air that wears your shape. If I had spoken, would it break you? I let you go, still feel the bruise. I loved you softer than your wall. I release you in this fading light alone, but gentler. Dust in the blinds, fading light bends, cold hand rest on chip seal. Our walls still talk in quiet breaths. Your ghost leans back from my reach. I hear our last soft words replaying slowly, like film that burns at the frail edges. I waited, you didn't come back. Night rain crawls down this tired glass. Photographs shaking in my weak hands. My fault hangs low in this room. I waited, you didn't shadows I loved with light. My light just stretched your fear long. I tried to speak across that white silence. Each word fell hard between your defenses. I waited, you didn't come back. Thunder once shook walls around us. My trembling breath spilled all my truth. You turned your wet face from my arms. I waited, you didn't come back. Empty doorways echo with almost us. Unreturned calls ring through my chest. If I had spoken loops like a curse, that I loved you enough to stay by you. You loved me enough to step away. Too late to learn how to hold you. Now rooms stand still, hollow with dust. Hope is a small dim dying light. I walk through our air like a stranger. Your armor, one love lost without blame. I waited, you didn't come back. Each step I take still walks toward you. My fault feels carved into my ribs. I would have held you longer through night if I had spoken before you closed. I waited, you didn't come back. I leave, but the space you left stays.
Night rain runs down the cafe glass. Cold hands wrap slow around this cup. Your guarded smile haunts the window glare. I see your storms in fading light. Words I say for you bruise my tongue tonight. If I had spoken sooner, would you stay? I loved you with open hands. You only knew how to build walls. Trembling breath caught between almost and never. Photographs shaking in my small dark mind. I loved you with open hands. We walked on air like fragile glass. Each step closer made you step back. Empty doorways, unreturned calls, quiet days. Hope was a thin thread I pulled. Every unsaid truth grows louder in this silence. If I had spoken softer, would you stay? I loved you with open
Under that street lamp your eyes almost thought. You let my fear rest in your gaze. Then years of hurt rose up like stone. You whispered goodbye and broke the spell. I loved you with open hands, I thought, but your heart only trusted its own walls. Now this quiet room holds your ghost. My fault echoes low against the glass. Hope alone could not hold your shadow. Too late, I learned how to let go. I loved you with open hands. You only knew how to build walls. If I'd spoken, would it change you? I would have held you longer through night rain. I'd taste each regret like bitter black coffee. I loved you with open hands. Outside the rain softens. Inside I finally release you. Night rain taps on a tired glass. Shadows sit still in quiet corners. Your cold hands live in my thoughts. I trace your silence like cracked stone. Every word I spoke felt so careful. Still your eyes turned away from mine. I waited, you didn't come back. Photographs shaking in my weak hands. Fading light crawls across this empty room. My trembling breath counts each unreturned call. I waited, you didn't come back. You built high walls around your sleep. Brick by brick, you shut out sound. Some nights your guard would almost fall. Soft eyes showed a hurt you hid. I reached slow, afraid my touch would break you. But each small step closer pushed you farther. I waited, you didn't come back. Your silence spoke louder than any blame. Hope felt thin like a fraying thread. My fault sits heavy in this chest. I waited, you didn't come back.
last night, shadows moved on your ceiling. You lay so close, still untouchable. My quiet truth shook under my hand. Your gaze held longing and shut again. I loved you, but not enough. Those words haunt halls of my ribs. I walked out into the night rain. City lights blurred like your fading face. If I had spoken, would you stay? I would have held you longer, not safer. I waited, you didn't come back. Empty doorway stare like open wounds. Fading light proves the day forgave nothing. My trembling breath learns to live with distance. My fault now is learning to let go. I waited, you didn't come back. In this quiet room, your distance still breathes softly. In this quiet room, your distance still breathes softly. Night rain threads through my thin coat. Streetlights smear on the wet glass. Quiet rooms where your laugh live. Cold hands search for your ghost. Every word we spoke folded in on itself. Paper cranes falling apart in my chest. I loved you in the locked room, where your eyes hid all that storm. My open palms cut on your silence. I wait, you didn't come back. I loved you in the locked room. Sat on the roof not speaking. The city lights spread like torn stars. I almost reached for your hand. You turned and the night grew far. Every small touch felt like breaking glass. Hope pulled thin, trembling with each retreat. I loved you in the locked room, where your heart stayed behind its walls. Your quiet warning burned through my longing. If I had spoken, would you stay? I loved you in the locked room. Whispered something soft and vanished. Your back a line fading through rain. My unreturned calls rang through empty doorways. Some doors stay closed to save what's left. Photographs shaking in my cold hands. I carry Now dusk sits heavy on this place, fading light pools in your old chair. I breathe in dust where you once were. Too late to learn how to lose you. I loved you in the locked room, where my fear and need tangled tight. I would have held you longer through night rain. My fault was loving past your limits. I waited, you didn't come back. I loved you in the locked room. I let you go slowly, like a last note. Cold hands rest on a cracked bench, fading light shakes on the lake. Folded notes soft at the corners, your name hides between my lines. I trace each word like your vanished face, breath trembling slow in this quiet air. I loved you enough to break. Night rain held our last small world. Your silence pressed hard on my chest. If I had spoken, would you stay? I loved you enough to break. We moved like shadows near a flame. You step back each time I reach. Empty doorways, unreturned calls, thin smiles. Hope hit that wall I never named. Watch my cracks mirror your guarded eyes. My fault grew loud in the dark. I loved you enough to break. Fog glass, our breaths almost the same. You turned away, armor tight and cold. I waited, you didn't come back. I loved you enough to break. Our love spoke hope against your defense. Two tongues lost in the same plea. Photographs shaking in my bare hands. Some hearts are built only to leave. If I'd held you longer, harder, would you still run from my arms? Last night lives in the backseat haze. Old regret stains the worn-out air. The space between us finally shattered. I saw myself vanish from my own eyes. I loved you enough to break. The lake keeps still what we could not. Fading light sinks where our summer fell.
fault stays, the blame drifts away. You love me enough to leave, I loved you enough to break. I walk on carrying what never had words. Dim light on my cold hands now. Steam climbs like a fading thought. Quiet room, my trembling breath waits. Your name shakes on this cracked cup. I leaned in close, you leaned a distance. Every soft word met your guarded silence. I loved you where you never opened. Night rain drew lines on our glass. Your eyes begged me not to ask. Two hearts near, still far as strangers. I loved you where you never opened. Rainy Tuesday, city blurred in gray. Wet streets held our small secret. You spoke half-truths, I spilled all each step I took. You stepped back. I reached for trust, you reached for distance. Every slow smile met your quiet silence. I loved you where you never opened. Streetlights shook on broken puddles. Your hand flinched when I reached out. Hope was thin as that night air. I loved you where you never opened. Empty doorways watched us fall apart. Unreturned calls rang inside my chest. If I had spoken, you'd still leave. Your walls were born before my name. I walked off, my fault still followed. Love hid armor, shattered into dust. Back home I trace you on glass. Letters slide down with slow rain. Photographs shaking in my tired hands. I waited, you didn't come back. I loved you where you never opened. Fading light stains this quiet room. My voice breaks on the words, stay too late to learn your hidden wounds. I held you close, never held you in. I loved you, never opened. I sit with our silence and let you go.